unbelievable. Just unreal. Adrian Griffin got fired from the Bucks. Not only that, but the Bucks are bringing in Doc Rivers to be their new head coach. Just unbelievable. This is Sports Guy Talking that you guys are watching and listening to. I am Dustin Tran, your host, as I am here today to talk about Adrian Griffin getting fired by the Bucks despite coaching the Bucks to the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. In fact, Adrian Griffin ended up having a record of 30-13 as a head coach, which is pretty good for a first-time head coach. Instead, the Bucks are now going to replace Adrian Griffin with Doc Rivers, as he will be expected to lead the Bucks into an NBA championship this season. Before I say anything else, though, I want to present you guys with the topic question. So, here it is. Did the Bucks make a mistake firing Adrian Griffin? Absolutely. There is no doubt in my mind that the Milwaukee Bucks just messed up big time. Why would you fire a first-year head coach that is leading your team to a number 2 seeded team in the Eastern Conference? It doesn't make any sense to me. Adrian Griffin has actually done a pretty solid job on the Milwaukee Bucks. Look, you hired a first-year head coach. Growing pains were to be expected. I understand that the Milwaukee Bucks have a really good basketball team. When you have a team fielded of Damian Lillard, Giannis Antetokounmpo, Khris Middleton, and other solid role players on this roster, you are expected to be the best team in the Eastern Conference. And look, I'll be the first person to tell you that the Milwaukee Bucks were going to win the NBA championship when they made that trade for Damian Lillard. And I still thought that they could have been title contenders in the Eastern Conference. But by hiring Doc Rivers, you just took yourself out of that equation. Because what is Doc Rivers known for? Doc Rivers is known for being a choke artist come playoff time. There's a reason why Doc Rivers has not won a title since 2008. There's a reason why Doc Rivers has not made the NBA Finals since 2010. Heck, he hasn't even made the Eastern Conference Finals or the Western Conference Finals for that matter. He hasn't even made an appearance in there since 2012, and he's already coached on 4 different franchises. How many years and how many teams does it take for NBA organizations to realize that Doc Rivers is not a championship caliber coach anymore? Look, he's coached the Orlando Magic, the Boston Celtics, the Los Angeles Clippers, and the Philadelphia 76ers. Out of those teams, 3 of those 4 teams have title contending rosters year in and year out. I'll give him a pass on the Orlando Magic because that was many years ago. That was before I even started watching basketball, so I'm not going to act like I watched the basketball back then and I could comment about it. But as far as the Celtics, Clippers, and 76ers, yeah, they should have been able to win more than 1 title. Can you believe that Doc Rivers only won 1 title on that super team where they had Kevin Garnett, Rajon Rondo, Paul Pierce? They had a lot of good players in that title run. They won 1 title, yes, but they should have been able to win more than 1 title. They should have been able to build a dynasty out of that roster, and Doc Rivers massively underachieved with that roster. And then, of course, you look at his tenure on the Los Angeles Clippers. He doesn't do too well over there. Yes, they make the playoffs basically every year except for one of those years, but he also had a stacked roster in all of those years except for one of those years. Coincidentally, the 1 year where he didn't have a stacked roster, they did not make the NBA playoffs. My point being is that Doc Rivers goes as far as his roster takes him, but actually that's too kind of a statement. Doc Rivers can only have an all-time great roster in order to contend for the playoffs, and then when he does get to the playoffs, his lack of coaching gets exposed come playoff time. And then you look at his tenure on the Philadelphia 76ers. This dude was granted with 2 all-stars on his roster, James Harden and Joel Embiid, and this guy couldn't make it work. I don't know how he doesn't get a core of Joel Embiid and James Harden to 1 conference finals. Look, I understand James Harden is also a choke artist come playoff time, but he could get you to the conference finals at least. That's what he did in Houston, and Doc Rivers couldn't even get that part right. If you want to talk about blowing 2-0 leads in the NBA playoffs, Doc Rivers is your man. He'll blow a 2-0 lead like it's nothing. And if you want to talk about blown 3-1 leads, oh yeah, Doc Rivers is also your guy too. The Milwaukee Bucks supposedly fired Adrian Griffin because he doesn't have enough playoff experience. But trust me, Adrian Griffin is going to do a better job in the playoffs than Doc Rivers ever will, because Doc Rivers is one of the most overrated coaches in the history of basketball. You can ask fans, you can ask players about Doc Rivers. Look, Doc Rivers might be a great guy and everything like that, but Doc Rivers is not a great basketball coach come playoff time. The Milwaukee Bucks supposedly are telling you that they fired Adrian Griffin because he didn't have enough playoff experience and that he would be outmatched in a playoff series. But if that was really the case, why would they go out and hire Doc Rivers? We all know that Doc Rivers is overmatched come playoff time. Honestly, I think the real reason why the Milwaukee Bucks fired Adrian Griffin was because he did not get along with some of the people on the Milwaukee Bucks front office. Because you remember the Terry Stotts incident that happened earlier in the season where Terry Stotts was the lead assistant and Adrian Griffin and Terry Stotts get into a fight over it, and then Terry Stotts ends up leaving the team on October 19th. I remember that incident. So that could have also played a role. Maybe Adrian Griffin didn't get along with people in the front office. Maybe Adrian Griffin didn't get along with the players. Sure, there might not have been any fights out loud on the court, but maybe there was something going on behind the scenes. respect, because you don't fire a coach after leading his team to the number 2 seed in the Eastern Conference. And more importantly, he was actually doing a pretty solid job coaching basketball on the basketball court. He won 30-13. That's a lot of games to win in your first 43 games. It's not too many coaches that can win almost 70% of their games in order to start off their career. I understand that Adrian Griffin had Giannis Antetokounmpo and Damian Lillard, and that yes, their defense fell off from previous seasons, but that was to be expected. I expected the Milwaukee Bucks defense to get worse compared to last season, because the Milwaukee Bucks this year are 22nd in defensive rating. Last year they were top 4 defensively, but that was going to happen because they changed up the defensive schemes. It got worse in the backcourt. They traded away Jrue Holiday, an elite perimeter defender. Now they get Damian Lillard, a guy that can score a lot of points, but he also gets burned a lot on defense. We all know that Damian Lillard is a liability on the defensive end of the floor. Now, obviously, if you're the Milwaukee Bucks with that roster, you needed an offensive coach. You needed somebody with an offensive background, and obviously, Adrian Griffin didn't have that. Now, maybe Adrian Griffin would have eventually grown into that role, but as of right now, Adrian Griffin doesn't have those skills. My problem with this is that they hired Doc Rivers, who is also a defensive-minded head coach. How is he going to get Damian Lillard to put up record-breaking points? The way I see it, Damian Lillard is actually probably going to get worse with Doc Rivers as his head coach, because Doc Rivers does not do a good job putting players in positions to succeed. If anything, Doc Rivers puts people in bad positions for success. He holds people back. Ask James Harden if that happened to him. Ask the players on the Clippers if that happened to them as well. You look at how Chris Paul couldn't even get to the conference finals with Doc Rivers as his head coach. How do you not get to the conference finals with Chris Paul, Blake Griffin, JJ Redick, and DeAndre Jones? These were all of those players in their primes. How do you not even make one Western Conference Finals appearance with that roster? Obviously, I'm not high on the Milwaukee Bucks hiring Doc Rivers. This team is going to be a second round exit. Obviously, the Philadelphia 76ers, they're right behind the Milwaukee Bucks in the Eastern Conference. I'm expecting the Philadelphia 76ers to beat them come playoff time. I think Nick Nurse is going to outcoach Doc Rivers in a playoff series. You can't trust Doc Rivers whenever it matters most. And for the Milwaukee Bucks to fire Adrian Griffin, it had to be more than basketball related. And for them to hire Doc Rivers, well, I guess Damian Lillard is never getting his ring that he desired to have. We all know that Damian Lillard has tried really hard to get a ring, and he tried to leave the Trailblazers in order to ring chase, which I don't blame him for, because he has given everything to the Trailblazers for many years, and he wanted to finally contend for a championship. Obviously, the Trailblazers were not going to give that to him, so instead, he ends up going to the Milwaukee Bucks thinking, okay, we're going to be able to grow alongside with Adrian Griffin, and I'm going to be able to develop chemistry with Giannis Antetokounmpo, and obviously, that didn't happen. But why would you hire Doc Rivers? It just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. You needed an offensive-minded guy. You could have rehired Mike Budenholzer. You could have called up James Borrego or something like that before the year started. You could have called up Mike D'Antoni. But to hire Doc Rivers in this situation, it just doesn't make a lot of sense to me. Maybe they think they can improve the defensive rating. I'm telling you, that's not going to happen. Because if Damian Lillard plays defense for your team, you're not going to be great defensively. I don't care if he tries his hardest on the defensive end of the floor. He's just too small to play defense, and he's a lightweight defensively. Even I think I could cook Damian Lillard on the defensive end of the floor, because the guy's just a defensive liability. He's a great player offensively, but defensively, he can't play defense. And the Doc Rivers hiring, it's not going to save the Milwaukee Bucks. They're not even going to go to the Eastern Conference Finals this year. I see the Milwaukee Bucks exiting in the second round, and that's probably the best case scenario. They honestly did not upgrade by firing Adrian Griffin. If anything, they downgraded. As far as what the Milwaukee Bucks didn't tell you about Adrian Griffin, hey, maybe he had trouble getting along with people in the front office. Maybe that's why they decided to cut the cord now. Maybe they want to take a gamble and hire a quote-unquote championship caliber head coach. I say quote-unquote championship caliber head coach because he won a title in 2008. That's a really long time ago. Obviously, Doc Rivers is not the same guy that he was back then. Honestly, that 2008 title run, he had a loaded roster. Who wouldn't have won with the 2008 Boston Celtics as head coach? I think most head coaches could have won a title with that roster. Anyways, though, it was a mistake hiring Doc Rivers as their head coach. They should have kept Adrian Griffin. The Milwaukee Bucks, this move is going to backfire on them, and they're going to wish that they didn't fire Adrian Griffin by the end of the year. So that's why the Bucks made a mistake firing Adrian Griffin, as hiring Doc Rivers will end up backfiring on the Bucks moving forward. Remember, go ahead and subscribe to Sports Guy Talking, like the video, and please comment down below. If you guys do that, I may shout you guys out in my Instagram story every Monday. That'll be for the @Dustin_Tran Instagram account. Make sure to follow me on Instagram @Dustin_Tran and at Sports Guy Talking. Also, go follow me on Twitter @Dustin_Tran. Again, go ahead and do those things that I just told you guys to go do. Hope believe you guys enjoyed the content that was just produced. Peace out. I hope you enjoyed that video. Want more Sports Guy Talking, the home of great sports content? Make sure you click that subscribe button to get the latest from Sports Guy Talking. Go ahead and like the video, comment down below, check the description box on the video in order to follow my Instagram and Twitter. Also, be sure to check out more of the best clips from the YouTube channel, Sports Guy Talking.